In this video, I'm going to be making a 2-inch wrought iron timber framing chisel. I'm going to be starting with a piece of large plate wrought iron that I'm going to forge into a rough rectangular shape on the power hammer. So here we go. Now that I have the wrought iron forged into a rectangle that is roughly 2 inches wide, I'm going to start isolating the material that will later become the socket for the chisel. It's at this time that I stop using the face of the hammer and start using the cross peen side so that I can spread the material lengthwise instead of spreading it in all directions. Here you can see I'm starting to form the socket. Once I have it bent all the way around and can fit a mandrel in it, I'm going to start forging it at some forge welding temperatures and close up the seams of the socket. Now that I have the socket all finished, I'm going to flip the chisel back around and start refining the shape of the cutting edge. So for the moment, I'm done with the forging, so I'm just going to let it cool down in the air to slightly anneal so I can grind it. And the reason I'm grinding it is wrought iron on its own doesn't make a very good cutting tool. It lacks the carbon content to get hard enough. So I'm going to be forge welding a piece of 1095 steel to the back so that once it's ground, it'll be part of the cutting edge. And here you can see me cleaning up both pieces. Now that both pieces are ground free of scale and are flat, I'm going to take them over to the welder and just tack weld the two together to make forge welding easier. Because I am now using a high carbon steel, I will add some flux to prevent scale buildup. And then I'm going to really let it soak in the heat to make sure that it's fully at forge temperature. And then I'm going to set the welds on the anvil and move it over the power hammer. Now I've come back to the grinder, and I'm going to start flattening the back of the chisel and making sure the sides are parallel and at 2 inches. Here I've repositioned the slack belt on the grinder, and I'm just using it to polish up the socket of the chisel. At this point I'm grinding the edge of the chisel. I'm trying to make it about 30 degrees, but I really just need to get it close because I'm going to tune it in when I start sharpening it. Now that I have the edge ground, I'm going to put it back into the forge and heat it up for hardening. And I'm going to quench it into warm oil. Here I'm moving on to the sharpening process. I've got a piece of 220 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to be taping it to this piece of glass so that it stays flat. And I'm going to be using a sharpening guide to maintain the proper angle throughout this process. Now I've moved to a piece of 320 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to repeat the process. I ended up repeating this process until I worked my way all the way up to 1,000 grit sandpaper. Now I'm making the ring that is going to keep the back of the chisel handle from splitting. I'm going to make this by punching a hole in the center of this piece of wrought iron, and I will then use a series of mandrels to expand it until it's the right diameter. Now that the ring is finished, I'm moving on to the handle. The handle is made out of red oak, and here you can see the process of me grinding it into shape. Now, due to an SD card malfunction, I did lose some of the footage of me shaping the handle. So here we're just going to cut to the handle's all done, and I'm bringing it over to the forge to just darken it up a little bit, give it some character. And then I'm going to assemble the chisel and we'll be all finished.